Hello, I'm Pat Dennis, and welcome back to the Theatre of Thrills podcast, where today I'm going to briefly talk about two films, and I say briefly because I do not have a great deal to say about either of them. The first one was called The Blood Beast Terror from 1968, not to be confused with Night of the Blood Beast from 1958, or the short story by Darkwell Bled, Siege of the Blood Beast. This is The Blood Beast Terror. This is The Blood Beast Terror from 1968. The film stars Peter Cushing, who is unfortunately not playing the scientist, the mad scientist, but probably a wise decision for reasons I'll get into. Instead, he's playing the detective who's trying to investigate these murders perpetrated by the mad scientist monsters. And that immediately probably sounds like a familiar plot, and it is. This movie is just Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein if the monster, instead of being sewn together by corpses, sewn together, made up of corpses rather, he's not sewn together by corpses, he is corpses that have been sewn together. Instead of that being what the monster is, it's just a big old moth woman. It's a pretty young woman, pretty young lady, who sometimes turns into a moth beast, which looks like a person wearing a cheap morph suit, and not a bad head, not a bad mask thing. It looks like it's a pretty good looking monster, all things considered. It's just unfortunate you don't see it much. And by pretty good, I mean by like D-grade Monster Mash movie standards. This is a monster. It's not going to win any awards for best makeup or anything. It's just a monster, and it's fine. Now, why I said it's good that the mad scientist isn't played by Peter Cushing, even though the movie would have been better if it was, is because this is, of course, during the period that Peter Cushing was playing Dr. Frankenstein in like 5 or 6 British Hammer horror movies, and this feels like a bad version of a British Hammer horror movie. It's got the same pacing, and it's also shot in England, so all the settings look the same. The actors are, shared from it. I don't think it was a Hammer horror movie. I didn't bother looking it up, but it's very much that vibe. So if they had done Peter Cushing as the mad scientist, it might have even felt like it was just Dr. Frankenstein taking a pause from creating monsters out of flesh to, for some reason, playing with Lepidopteras. And he's like, I guess I'll try moths today. So it's probably a good idea that they did put him into a different archetypal role just to distinguish that. And the scientist they chose was fine. He was bland and just, as vanilla as they come. It wasn't a enjoyable role. It wasn't an enjoyable performance. No one's going to write home about it like the wonderful Peter Cushing Frankenstein is, where it's just the most entertaining thing in the movies is watching Peter Cushing's Dr. Frankensteins go mad. But in this, it was just a mad scientist filling that archetypal mad scientist role so the movie could happen. So I get why they did it, to distinguish it from the Frankenstein franchise. But it's then odd because during the movie, there's a play in the film that is clearly Dr. Frankenstein. Like, that is the play being put on. But it's not just any Frankenstein play. It appears to be spoofing the Hammer horror Frankenstein movies. So it's weird that they went out of their way to distinguish themselves from the Frankenstein franchise by putting Peter Cushing in a role different than he would have, have been chosen for, you would think, only to then remind you how similar this is to the Frankenstein movie starring Peter Cushing. So that was very odd. And it's not just a quick reference either. That scene with the play goes like 5 minutes, it felt like. It's far too long for just a little Easter egg. I kept thinking they would cut away, but it just kept going. I imagine that it was meant to be far shorter, and then they didn't meet their runtime and had to add it back in. There's not much else to say about The Blood Beast Terror. It's not a great movie. It's not a terrible movie. It's about as good as the bad Hammer horror films, where it goes a little too long. There's like a third act that then goes into what feels like a fourth act that they could have done without. And at that point, you're kind of ready to be done with it. When they do show the monster, it's enjoyable, but it's too few and far between. And there's just so many times throughout the movie where you're thinking, I wish I was watching one of the many far superior Peter Cushing Frankenstein films. So I don't recommend you watch this unless you're a huge Peter Cushing fan. There's better monster movies with Peter Cushing in it to watch, like literally all of the Frankenstein ones. I mean, if you've only got time to watch one, go with The Evil of Frankenstein. It's probably the best one, and is kind of a soft reboot of what they had established so far, so it's fine to start with that one. There's not much continuity shared throughout all of them anyway, but go watch The Evil of Frankenstein and don't bother with the Blood Beast Terror. Then moving straight along to the second movie I watched of the night, Primal Species, which I didn't realize when watching it is also called Carnasaur 3. I've not seen Carnasaur 1 and 2. I don't think it would have dramatically altered my viewing experience if I had. It didn't seem to be building tremendously on any existing lore. So I'm not going to say, don't watch this if you've not seen Carnasaur 1 and 2. I think it's viewable as a standalone movie. I'm looking at it now on the internet because I just Googled it to make sure I got Carnasaur's name right, because it's not a real word, I don't think. Or if it is, it's one I've not ever used. And it's got a 3.1 out of 10 on IMDb, which I'm going to be controversial and say is lower than it deserves. This is a 6. It's fine. It's not, Jurassic Park. The movie's about essentially dinosaurs or guys in rubber suit dinosaur costumes on a rampage in a box factory, essentially. It's some warehouse that seems to be largely full of empty boxes near a dock. And they're fighting military guys and Navy guys who are trying to stop the dinosaurs. The movie is not a Spielberg film. It's definitely not Jurassic Park standard, but I would say I probably enjoyed it more than Jurassic World or any of the films in the reboot Jurassic franchise. It's not scary at any point, but it is a good amount of fun, and the costumes are not too bad for a $0 Roger Corman film. I mean, this is Roger Corman. I wonder how many people who gave it the 3.1 out of 10 on IMDb know who Roger Corman is, because I started the movie and it came up with produced by Roger Corman, and he's like the king of schlock. Like, he's made 1 billion D-grade films. So as soon as I saw his name, I sort of knew what I was expecting and lowered my expectations accordingly. So I guess if you're going in expecting like a Hollywood blockbuster, you'd be pretty disappointed by the movie. But if you're going in expecting just a schlocky film about not very strong looking military people, they're presented as if it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's team from Predator or Ripley's team from Aliens. They're like talking the big game as if they're like the hardcorest of the hardcore space marine sort of guys, and they all look they look like I could beat them all up and I'm a total wimp. They got noodle arms and drooping shoulders. Like, they don't look like they're hardcore military people. But it's fine. The dinosaurs don't look like real dinosaurs either. So suspend your disbelief and enjoy it. And some of the dialogue is pretty good fun. You've got all of your classic characters in there. You've got the badass woman, the overconfident male. You've got the slapstick comedy relief, the scientist who's more interested in saving the science experiment than she is saving lives, the ballbuster general. Everyone's in there that you would expect in this kind of movie. There are some clever decisions, like towards the end, the dinosaurs are on a boat and it's a food freighter. So they decide that they can use its cooling system to freeze the dinosaurs to subdue them because they're cold-blooded lizards. And I thought that was clever. It was using what they had available, both as far as like the characters in the film go and also the filmmakers. They were using what they had. It's definitely, for a large part, a rip-off of Aliens. Moving through the narrow corridors and like fighting them and the little radar system, and it's very much rip-off of Aliens. But unlike the last movie, I'm not going to say watch Aliens instead. I think if you're a fan of schlocky monster films, especially dinosaur ones, this one's fine. It's just a lot of fun to see like all the strings in a Roger Corman movie. The costume of one of the dinosaurs gets downed, and as it falls, you can see its rubber costume bounce a little as it hits the ground because it's just a suit with no one in it and whatnot. It's very cheap and very charming. There is, I think, without exaggeration, roughly 1 billion Jurassic Park ripoffs. It's essentially its entire own subgenre within horror. And some of them are fun and good, and I would rate this as one of them. It's up there with Jurassic City as far as like a bad but enjoyable... Well, I'm not even going to say bad, but a cheap but enjoyable horror movie goes. It's just good fun, and if you're having a movie night with your mates, have it as a double feature. Put on Jurassic City, which is about CG dinosaurs loose inside a maximum security prison, which is also containing a couple of sorority girls for some reason. It's great fun. And also this movie, Primal Species. Watch them both in a row, and I guarantee you're going to have a good fun night. And you know what? As fake as the dinosaurs look in both Jurassic City and Carnasaur 3, they're no less real than the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. They're all just make-believe, so have some fun with it. And with that said, thanks for tuning in to Creative Elk's Theatre of Thrills podcast. I'm Pat Dennis, and come back same time next week where I'll ramble about another film for a little bit. Bye.